Thank you for joining me today. My name is Steve Dodds, and I'm the head of the Garage Composites Compliance Division. We do the research so that you don't have to. And today we're going to be talking about ADA website compliance. So what are we going to cover? We're going to talk about, number one, how we got here. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history and background on the Americans with Disabilities Act. Then we're going to get into what has shined a spotlight on the websites and why we're really having this conversation. What kind of set this into motion? We're also going to talk about who needs to comply, because not every website out there needs to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Then number four, we're going to talk about some tools that you can use to check your website. And then finally, what do we do to fix our website if we do have an issue and we need to comply? So, number one, the Americans with Disabilities Act was signed into law by George W. Bush July 26th of 1990. And the purpose of the law really was to make sure that people with disabilities had access to the same opportunities that everyone else has. And that's what I really want to focus on, is that they have access to the same opportunities. Now let's fast forward a year and a couple weeks later. The internet becomes available to the public. So at that point in time, it was really more of a luxury. You could go out, you could buy a computer, probably looking at a couple $1,000, a modem. You're looking at, $100, $200. And now the computers, for anybody who doesn't remember this time, the computers weren't just online, right? You'd have to sign in, you'd have to tell the computer to get online. It would start, and eventually it would connect to America Online. And America Online, there was some website capability, but mostly it was just a way for us to use what we called electronic mail, email. So you would log on, you could communicate with other people that also had a computer and electronic mail, but this was not a necessity. This wasn't something that we needed to have. Well, over time, it's gotten to the point where we have online banking. We can call ourselves a Lyft or an Uber, a car to our house to come pick us up. We can shop online. We can pay our bills online. Some job applications are online. Appointment scheduling for healthcare providers is online. And at this point in time, it's really becoming a necessity for us to have this access in order to have the same availability, the same rights as other people. So everything's whizzing right along. We're loving the internet. It's making our lives more convenient, but nobody is paying attention to how lack to access to some of these services is affecting the blind, deaf, other people with disabilities. Now, there are certain pieces of hardware and software that they can use in order to help them gain access to these what have become necessities. But the problem is that our websites have to be designed in a certain way so that that hardware and software works correctly. So, Winn-Dixie. If you're not familiar with Winn-Dixie, they are a grocery store. They have about 500 stores, mostly in the southeast of the U.S. And on June 13th of 2017, they basically were found to be in violation of the ADA requirements. So even though there weren't specific guidelines laid out, again, go back to what the law was designed to do. It's designed to guarantee that everyone has equal opportunity and no one's discriminated against. What it comes down to is there are several screen readers out there. The most prominent one, or the one that was addressed in the website, is called JAWS. Not the movie with the shark that attacks, but it's called JAWS. And basically what it does is read the screen out to the person, the end user, so that they can so that they can tell what buttons do, what to push, how to navigate the entire website. Well, without the appropriate code on your website, the screen reader will not work. This is pretty standardized code, so it is something that any web designer should know about and should be able to design. So let's talk real quick before we go into how to check your site. Let's talk about who needs to comply. So number one, if you engage in commerce with the general public. So I think I can pretty safely say if you are in the RV industry, in the marine industry, in the power sports industry, you are marketing your products to the general public. Probably have a building, they probably come in, they can buy these things from you. So I would say everybody that's listening that's in one of those industries is going to have to comply based on that. Now, here is the one that you're going to have to look at. So if you employ 15 or more full-time employees each workday, you have to comply. Now, there are some small dealerships out there that if you have less than 15 employees, full-time employees, you may not have to comply. Now, that just means you can't be sued for non-compliance. I would still recommend it's best business practices to make sure that your website accommodates anyone who wants to go on it and wants to possibly purchase what you have. When you start thinking about it, like it is kind of silly to think that someone who can't see might want to own a motorcycle or ATV, okay? Because they probably can't use it, but you don't know who might be buying it as a present, a Christmas gift, a spouse of someone who is going to ride. Maybe the person who's looking is going to be on the back, or maybe it's not that they're visually impaired. Maybe they're deaf. Well, deaf people can still totally ride. If we don't accommodate for all of the people that want to come on our website and do business with us, it's just poor business. So you may not be like under the gun for compliance if you have 15 or less employees, but I would still recommend that you make sure your website is compliant. The other piece here, the third one, if you're open more than 20 weeks per year, which I'm pretty sure most dealerships are, that really would apply to like pop-up Halloween stores and Christmas stores, stuff like that. So to kind of sum it up, the only thing you really need to look at if you're in the power sports, marine, or RV industry is if you have less than 15 employees, you're not under the gun. Everybody else, you need to be compliant. So let's talk about some tools you can use. So if you go to, and I'm not going to give you a specific tool because there are a bunch of them out there. They're all free. If you just Google ADA compliance website tool, I came up with a page, and I actually hit to the next. I clicked to the next couple pages. There were pages and pages of free website compliance tools. I would pull up several different ones, punch in your website, and just see what they come back with. If by chance you go on, you use the tool, and it says everything looks good, man, rock on, great. So if not, you're going to want to address that immediately. So the tools basically look for features that that need to be on the website to allow this software to work correctly. JAWS is one of them. So it looks for features like the buttons. And here's an example. Okay, so if someone who can't see is using your website, they need to be able to navigate through tabbing, arrow up and down arrows. So they should be able to tab through your website, and as they tab through, get auditory information about what the button is, what it does, if they click on it, where they're going to go. There's just navigational information that needs to be given to them in an auditory fashion. Number two, they're also going to look at contrast issues. So some people who are visually impaired rather than absolutely totally without sight need high contrast on the website. So there will be some areas where they recommend, you fix certain contrast issues. And then also structural elements is another big piece. So the way your menus operate, some code allows these readers to work and kind of tab through the menus and that kind of stuff. Other code does not. So they're going to basically tell you through these tools what complies, what doesn't comply, what things you should address, and then you can go from there. Now, once we have that information, the best thing you can do is go to your website provider. Your website provider probably has a solution for this. In fact, there are a couple different website providers out there that I know of that have a solution for this that they don't automatically deploy on your site because of their fear that it could not be compliant and then they could be responsible. So ultimately, what you want to do is do the check, report the results back to your website provider, and your website provider can work with you to make sure that your site is totally 100% ADA compliant. Now, the thing is, and this is where, as a dealer, it's really easy to say, you know what, I outsource that, whoever I outsource that through is responsible. The problem is that is not true. The buck stops with you. And basically, if your business, no matter how much you outsource, if your business is not doing business with people who are compliant, you are responsible. This is not just ADA compliance. This is across the board. Advertising compliance. It's everything. So what you want to make sure of is that you do the due diligence. You make sure your website is compliant, and if it's not, get your website provider to fix it. If they can't fix it or you're not getting a sufficient answer from them, find another provider. There are providers out there that will help you make sure your dealership website is compliant. Well, this concludes another video from Garage Composites Compliance Division. We do the research so you don't have to. If you like what you saw here today and you're interested in getting certified, you can go to the description below and you'll see a link to the online certification. Also, if you are not already subscribed, please click subscribe and you will get notified whenever I host new videos. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.